This fine mansion was built in the 1860s for Queensland's first judge, Alfred Lutwich. It formed the centrepiece of a huge estate which included the land where Kedron State High School now stands. By the 1950s, the judge's vast estate had been broken up into residential areas and the Kedron Park racetrack. Always ready for a cold beer off the wood, and even readier for a modest wager, the punters were seldom left wanting. In fact, during one major flood, they insisted on a race being held with the trotting gigs up to their axles in water, just to satisfy the legal requirement of the need for at least one race to allow gambling on interstate events. By 1956, that colourful character in the Australian landscape, John Wren, had sold the racetrack to the Queensland government, who planned a teachers' training college and high school for the site. The high school was built to accommodate the exploding baby boomer population who poured out of primary schools and trade colleges.
Well, I was a foundation teacher at Kedron High School. Arrived there on day one, and well, there wasn't a school there at all. There was only a mess of old decrepit buildings which had long been unused by a harness racing association, and also people who like to train and run greyhounds. So all that was there were the old grandstand, refreshment rooms, totalisator, and also the old steward's room. So there were also plenty of stables there too. As a matter of fact, I recall that one school in Brisbane used to say that KSHS, which of course is Kedron State High School, actually stood for Kedron State Horse Stables.
I attended Kedron High in 1956 to 58, and I can remember in the early days we were in a shed and it rained for 2 months solid, and every day we would be able to sit in the classroom, the roof leaked, we'd have our umbrellas up and our raincoats on, and it was only the class captains that were allowed to hop up and catch the frogs.
My first memories of Kedron High School was the rain. The first 2 months it poured. The buildings weren't completed, so we had to be housed in the old grandstand and the tea rooms. Our particular classroom was the tea room, and the rain trickled along underneath our feet for almost two months. And with the frogs, it was rather horrendous.
Oh yes, the boys used to keep pet frogs. It was a very rainy first season when we started at Kedron High School, and we were just in old sheds, and the boys used to keep all these pet frogs to let go and surprise all the girls and the teachers.
I was at Kedron High from 1956 to 1957, and when I went there, the buildings were not ready, except for the commercial class, which I was in, and we were fortunate and made quite a few of the other students very jealous because we had a beautiful new room with new typewriters, but we were bits of devils. We used to give the teachers a bit of curry because every time we could we'd lean on the tab area or the space bar so that we could ring the bells, and we'd do this nearly all through most of our commercial lesson on learning to type.
Our policy from the staff angle was to try and get as many successes as we could in the first year so that we might start off well, and the students were told that they were setting a foundation for those that were to follow. So we were very pleased to win a C-grade football premiership in our first year of operation.
This modern club of today was a more modest affair when Kedron High opened in 1956, but nevertheless was an important part of school life.
We had a six-piece dance band. We used to play up at the Memorial Hall for all the dances. You know, the disadvantage was you didn't get to meet any of the girls. And when you're the drummer, of course, you've got to pack up all the drums after the dance, and you're the last one to go home, and all the good-looking girls have gone as well, you know. So there's a price to pay, but they were wonderful times. It was a pretty good band. We thought we were crash hot, and we loved playing the dance music. But I'm a jazz fanatic, and even today I love jazz, and I learned a lot of that love of music here at the school.
Oh. We had a lovely time in the first year, and we used to do quite a bit of flirting, and being just one class or one grade, and we used to organise dances and who we were going to dance with. They were held at the Kedron School of Arts, and we used to write notes on boards, and when the teacher had the back to the blackboard, we'd stick them up in the window, and they'd get the message, and they'd send notes back to us. So all the dances were organised, you knew who your partner was going to be, and in what order you were going to dance with them.
The attitudes to education was really quite different. When we were younger, we never had the choices. We didn't have a variety of subjects to choose from. You were given, I think, 8 subjects, and that was it. You either did commercial, or if you wanted to go on and do a trade, you had to do industrial, or if you wanted to be a doctor or whatever, a teacher, you had to do academic. You couldn't mix subjects, so you never had many choices. If you didn't succeed in one area, well, you didn't have any other subjects to fall back on. A lot of parents probably like mine, they thought that education for girls was a waste. A lot didn't think like that, but a lot did. They'd say, well, if you get an education, what point is it? Girls being educated, they get married and then they stay home, and back then you stayed home and you looked after your family.
Gavin Semple was firm, but he was respected, and most of the kids that I knew felt that way about him. They knew right from wrong, and when they did wrong, they expected to be punished. And there was no bitterness towards Gavin Semple, even though he was the principal and gave them the cuts.
I still live a stone's throw from the school, and occasionally I do get a call from them to come over to the school to tell them something about the past days. And this happened just recently prior to our Anzac Day, when the school decided that it would be a good thing to incorporate some of the traditions of the original cadet unit into their Anzac Day ceremony. So I was able to go over to tell them the significance of the school flags, which the unit used on their passing out parades, and they paraded the flags on their own Anzac Day, which I went to later, and described briefly what the significance was to the present day students.
Well, I think what I got from my years at high school was an absolute love of learning. I've never stopped. I've taken a leading role in governing councils in education in the Territory. I've chaired open college councils. I've been involved in training for the tourism industry and done a lot of work in education, and I think it all came from some very happy years at both primary and secondary school in Queensland.
There was a great deal of loyalty at the school when I was here. I suppose always in the area of sport, perhaps not so much in the academic kind of an area, but there was always a sort of a feeling of energy, and a lot of the kids from our time went on to become leaders in industry. They also went on to become leaders in commerce and in tourism, and I'm still bumping into them all around the world. And they say, I went to Windsor State School as well, and it's quite amazing the number of people who went to both Windsor and to Kedron High School. And so that combination it's amazing where you meet them, different parts of their lifestyle.
Well, my area of expertise was commerce, which in 31 years has gone from, well, Olivetti typewriters to computers. The students of 56 were in a somewhat unique situation in that they were foundation students, and they were the big boys and the big girls for the 4 years that they were here. I felt there was a certain, from observations I made, I felt there was a certain bonding between these people, amongst themselves and also with staff, and then on the other side, a bonding between members of staff.
The real boy, particularly in the industrial classes, were up to certain tricks, and one of them they tried on me was when I decided that I'd like to write to the parents about boys who did something well. Consequently, when one came in and handed me some money, I took his name and address, and also wrote it down in the book that I kept for giving him a reference at the end of the year. He thanked me. Next day, another boy from the same class tried the same thing. I took his name and address and said, "Coming a very civilised lot," and he went. And subsequently, the rest of the week, I had people from that same class coming in with the same thing. Each time, by the way, somebody from the class used to come up and claim it practically as soon as the boy got out. So, knowing them, the next boy that came in, I did the same thing for him, and then when his mate came up to get the money, I said, "He didn't hand it in," and he said, "He did, oh God, I'll have a go at him."
I can recall Alan Anderson, who was the principal at the time, constantly saying in assembly, pushing the barrier that you can't sit on your backsides all your life. You've got to get up and you've got to do things. You've got to be part of things. You've got to be involved. And I suppose that sort of what he said sunk into my mind, and I suppose I've lived by that ever since I've left school.
I didn't at much point in Cambridge. We both knew that he'd done wrong. There should have been a better way of doing it, but in 1700 it was hard for me to work out just how each person should be treated. But anyhow, I thought it was very effective in gaining the respect of the new people when they came in, and when the grade 8s came in, I used to parade along the verandas with a 6-foot cane to occasionally whack the wall with it to obtain this respect for what would happen if they did something wrong.
I was the A-grade rugby league coach from 64 until 1978, during which time we were undefeated in every year we competed. We're also the undefeated premiers in every one of those years, from 72 to 77. We did not lose a match of any kind, including Commonwealth Bank Cup games.
Yeah, I was captain of the 72 and 73 sides, which Bill Evans coached, and that was the forerunner to a long series. I think it's still the longest series of wins by a high school.
I was at Kedron from 1972 to 1976. It was a wonderful time for me. We had wonderful friends. It was a great group. We did a lot together and learnt a lot together. We had a lot of social times, a lot of great sporting times, a lot of hard work. Our teachers were good. There weren't many pressures on adolescents at that stage, and I think we were very lucky to go through with a group of people that we did. The tour to Carnarvon Gorge was just another huge learning experience. We saw the Maura mine, and we went to Kingaroy as well and saw a peanut factory, both of which I'd never seen before. The countryside was wonderful. Camaraderie was great. The tents were hard to deal with, and it was quite cold, but great experience. That's where people learn, out, not in the four walls of the room.
The school tour was a very prestigious thing to be able to go on. Because the school was so large, the kids used to line up at 5 o'clock in the morning on the day that the bookings opened in order to get onto the bus, and then sometimes there was a waiting list. We took 4 coach loads to Tasmania and thoroughly enjoyed every bit of it. It was the May holidays in those days, and it was very cold. Tropical safari was to Cairns. I think we had 4 coach loads in those days as well, and we were very fortunate having wonderful weather, and I think it's one of the most memorable tours that we did. We didn't have a bus breakdown. We didn't have anybody very sick on that tour, as you did with lots of students, but it was a very enjoyable tour. The school tour film shows students pushing buses. This seemed to be one of the things that we did, especially on some of the remoter areas where the buses got bogged. The kids always had to hop out and help. On a couple of the Central Australian tours, we actually had to push the bus across the border out of Queensland and into the Northern Territory. So there was a lot of pushing buses in those days.
The school sports carnivals were great. I mean, whether it be the athletics carnival or whether it be the swimming carnival, there was a great lot of inter-house spirit that went on within the houses and outside of the houses. I was interested in athletics. I did a lot of running at school, and the athletics was good. But at the end of the day, I think the best part was we used to have a novelty race or something like that, and there's a number of times where we got dressed up in flippers, goggles, and floaties, and jumped in the pool with a surfboard, and tried to win the novelty race. I can remember the athletics carnival. I think it was the last year that I was there in '76, and they had not so much a novelty race, but they had the girls open 4x100 relay, and the teachers entered a race, and they managed to get me in as the last leg, and they whacked a skirt on me and put a couple of oranges in the important places, and I think I won.
The musicals have always been a big part of the school curriculum, and back in the 70s they would have been at their strongest when the hall was put in and the stage facilities were put into the hall there. As the school numbers dropped, I think the fact that musicals need quite a fair percentage of the school population, the number of musicals may have dropped as well, but we decided to do a couple back in, as I said, 89, 90. Well, you always have disasters with them, but as a teacher, as far as being a teacher is concerned, in my 36 years of teaching, I would say that probably directing school musicals is where you get your best feeling of some sort of, what could I say, at the end when it actually goes on stage, you can stand back and say, well, what they're doing is the product of what I've done over the last 3 months. Whereas when you teach maths at the end of the year, you might leave at the end of the year saying, what did I really do over the last 12 months? Because there's nothing tangible to see. But when you put a musical on stage, you can actually stand back and look at the finished product. So it's quite satisfying from a teacher's point of view.
The school has achieved wonderful results in sport over the years, with particular individuals standing out. One would take too long to go through all those people that have achieved well in sport, but two that come to mind are firstly Janet Tibbetts, who represented Australia at the LA Olympics. She was a product of the school and went on there. And another interesting Olympian is Dean Smith. He came to the school as a hearing impaired student, did some athletics at school but didn't take it terribly seriously. He went on then after leaving school and took up athletics as a hearing impaired, or was it in the impaired games in the Paralympics. But he was doing so well at it that he then competed in the Paralympics, did so well that he moved on into the pentathlon for the main Olympics and represented Australia as an Olympian in open class events. These are just two examples. There are many, many more.
In 1985, the school was rocked by the loss of its magnificent library to arsonists.
A forced rear door of one wing of the school has led police to suspect arson. However, scientific spot detectives are sifting through the ruins of the buildings in the hope of finding more clues. The brigade was called around 2:30. When they arrived, they found a blaze out of control. Fanned by today's strong winds, it eluded all attempts by firemen to get at its heart, shifting quickly from the administration block and the library to several science rooms. That's when the explosion started. Chemicals kept in those rooms were probably responsible. Within 20 minutes, the wing was damaged beyond repair, and it became a matter of containment for fire officers. As police kept sightseers away, firemen clambered onto the roofs, and that was when the only injury occurred. A brigade member missed his footing and fell through the roof. He was transported to hospital with cuts and severe bruising.
The fire caused $1 million damage and destroyed most of the school's precious archives amassed over the years.
The fire of 1985 was a disaster for the school. It was devastating. Of course, students were crying, parents were crying, teachers were crying, and we had the most magnificent library, which was a great part of the loss. I think that the library was probably better set up than some of the municipal libraries, so it was an awful loss materially, but psychologically it was a terrible blow to the school.
The fire in 1985 wiped out everything in this library right down to the floor level, and there was some doubt whether it would be rebuilt on this site. However, it was rebuilt, and we opened the library in 1986 in August.
I took over from Jack O'Brien in 1987, and it was still a fairly difficult time at that time. The school had had a couple of fires, it had a dreadful storm which had wrecked the place, and a fair bit of the stuffing, I think, had been knocked out of the school, particularly in terms of public confidence, simply because of those incidents. So we simply had to do something about building the confidence up, and I thought, well, the best way of doing this is probably through the external appearance of the place. So my greatest assistance in doing that was a chainsaw and a tractor.
Today's Kedron State High School is a modern education facility, equal to any in Queensland. A school which has many facets along with its own individual charm and character. A pivotal part of the Kedron High School scene is its hearing impaired unit. A unit which does much more than teach those with a disability.
The hearing impaired unit is a very important part of the school because it gives our students the opportunity to grow in an environment that's semi-protected, but it also gives the students in the regular high school the opportunity as well to grow up with hearing impaired kids in their community, and the two things work very well together, and this means that life should be, on the whole, a little bit easier for kids when they leave school. One of the teachers in the unit is hearing impaired herself. Her name is Michelle. She came to me about 18 months ago, and she's worked out extremely well. The big benefit in that is that she's an excellent role model to our students. It's someone that they can look up to.
My role as a lab coordinator means that I canvass the local community and the school population to find tutors to assist our students that we've identified as having learning difficulties. The tutors tend to identify with the students in a different capacity. They become very close to the students, and they are in many ways a role model that the students look up to.
I've been teaching Latin for the last 5 years, and we are the only school to have an accredited junior Year 10 work program in Latin. In the last 2 years, I've been teaching ancient classical Greek.
Yeah, in the past, schools have serviced their local area, but since particularly inner city schools like Kedron have lost that enrolment because of the ageing population. And so what happens now is that you find you attract enrolments from a wide area simply because of the reputation or what parents have an understanding of the school. And hence we have attract enrolments from Ipswich, Petrie, New Farm, simply because of what students and what parents want from an education institution.
These students now seem to have accepted and adapted to the correct attitude to sport. We don't have sports jocks, we don't have people who are here as sports fanatics and nothing else. We don't have the people that don't indulge in sport. We have probably one of the better use of sport in the school for education.
Yeah, my favourite student would be Joyce Molyneux, who happens to be my wife of 19 years nearly now, and we've got 3 kids, none of which unfortunately come to Kedron.
Like any school, there are often times when a guiding hand is required, and Kedron High meets this with fairness and firmness.
I think students today probably have a wider awareness of what is available than 15 years ago. I guess television and media makes students more aware of what's happening in the world around them. Yes, probably more aware than I was when I was at school.
In the morning we have to check students for being late to school, for being in incorrect uniform, and for students requiring leave passes to leave the school during the day. And it's my job to round them all up and deal with them all one at a time as quickly as possible and get them back to class.
Students will always accept discipline, I think, if it's fair. It's not fair is the favourite statement of students, and I think if they perceive that things are just, they'll accept it. I certainly think their lives are more sophisticated so that you have problems of mobility because students have got cars, they can get away from the area, but generally speaking, while uniform standards might have relaxed from the old days of hats and gloves, standards are the same, attitudes to teachers, the same attitudes are expected, politeness and attitude to each other, but it's never easy.
We don't have any major discipline problems, but we certainly do have discipline problems, and we have to work at overcoming them. We have to work at ensuring that they don't become a problem, a concern for teachers and students and classes. But it would certainly be incorrect to say that there are no problems. In comparison to other schools, I guess, there are few problems.
I don't think that students themselves have changed over the years. I think in their hearts they're the same, but their lives are different, the pressures on them are different, consumerism has taken over, students need to have 3 pairs of runners, fancy jeans, their entertainment is expensive. When I first started, life was simpler. Kids were happy to have a pair of volley sand shoes, go to the movies, which were cheap, so they didn't have to have part-time jobs the way they do now.
Kedron High School has 33 different nationalities at last count within the school. We have every 2 years an All Nations Day ceremony to celebrate those diverse nations, where the students present costumes, food and cultural items for display.
On a more practical note, the basics of school life are not neglected at Kedron High. These award-winning gardens have been a striking feature of Kedron High for decades. Groundsman Rod Heath.
These are prize-winning gardens. In the past they've won, I believe, the first prize and a couple of minor places in the Courier gardening competition. The gardens, as you see them now, have been my responsibility for about just under 18 months. And I'm trying to create a cottage garden type effect where you have a combination of perennials, annuals and subtropicals and ground covers. Yeah, I believe there's fierce competition amongst the local schools and they're all very garden conscious.
When I commenced as convener, there was 1,200 students at the school. Now there is approximately 700. I have seen past roster books when there was 1,800 students at the school and they had 16 mothers on roster then. At the present time I have 2 mothers on roster. Most of the mothers now are back working. The mothers and myself are very strict on manners, and from when the students come in from the primary school, unless they say please or thank you, they will not be served, and the mothers are very strict on this too.
Yes, the Parents and Citizens, or P&C Association, is drawn from the parents of the students at the school, from a solid band of teachers, and also from citizens outside the school community that are also interested in the welfare of all the students.
And what do today's students of Kedron High think of their school?
Being school captain, I have to do a fair bit. I have to talk to the students and I have to talk to the teachers in administration. I have to basically let the students know what administration are doing and what they think is happening and what sort of is going to be happening in the future at the school, and also let administration know what the students want. I'm sort of the bridge between the students and the teachers to let them know what's going on.
For Year 11 students, it's a great turning point in their life, their studies, for their future careers, involved deeply in these remaining 2 years and seniors.
I'm a Year 8 student at Kedron High, and I really like it because the teachers are supportive and they understand your needs and they actually care about what you want to do when you get out of school.
And how do the people who know the school best describe Kedron High in a nutshell?
Looking at Kedron High, I would describe it as a traditional school. By traditional, I mean it sticks to the old values. We have discipline. The students have respect for each other, for the staff. The people accept responsibility for their actions. In a lot of cases, a lot of students don't actually start with this when they come to the school, but the school has always stayed a good school because it does tend to mould the students to what the school wants. The school doesn't go to what the students want.
Kedron would be one of the best, if not the best, schools I've taught in over a career of 36 years teaching. There are some traditions here, standards here that you don't find in other schools at the moment, and for those reasons alone, it's a great place to work in.
Kedron to me is a school that when I'm interviewing prospective new students and their parents, I can always say to them, whatever the children might think about the school, the teachers never want to leave, and that says something to me, that teachers only leave this school if they're promoted, if they retire, and very reluctantly if they get transferred. Very few teachers ever want to leave, and I think many students really feel the same way, particularly if they last through their 5 years.
Kedron State High School has to offer new students coming into the school a very varied curriculum, a traditional environment where respect for each other, respect for various nationalities within the school and respect for the discipline in the school is a high priority. It's a traditional school with a very conservative uniform and strong values of being fair to all and offering a good variety in curriculum for everyone so that they achieve their potential.
I see Kedron High School as an educational institution with a very supportive, proactive environment where the teachers are very committed to what they're doing and the students are responsive to that commitment. And as a result of that, I find Kedron High School a very comfortable school where a great deal is achieved with a minimum amount of fuss.
Well, that's the Kedron High School story. A story of tradition and achievement. A story that will continue for at least another 40 years.